today. One is the Duck Lake outlet and the other is the annual report. So I think we should probably just start with Duck Lake, and Terry, you'll be guiding us through that.
I will. Thank you, President Pedersen, managers. Let me share my screen here and I'll bring up presentation. We can go through this. Okay, let's 5. Cool. There we go. All right, managers, President Pedersen, managers. This has been going on for quite some time. Going to go through the history quick of Duck Lake for those, just to bring everybody up to speed. The outlet on Duck Lake. Go through the memorandum that Engineer Sobiak and myself put together. Trying to be a little more concise in what our recommendation would be for this. So if you'll remember, and you should, we've been talking about this for a long time, really since the Duck Lake Road project came about. 1969, they installed the outlet that you see where my mouse, that they can't see at home, but upper left of the document, of the graphic. And at that time, they installed the control elevation was really that panel in front of it all, which is set at 914.4. And in 1979, or sometime between 1979 and 2011, actually, we don't know precisely when, that front was cut out, which reduced the control elevation to 913.2. And then that's the middle column. And then in 2014, the existing configuration was installed, and that set the control elevation at 913.5, 913.45.
Is this related to the non-permit situation?
Yes, this was when they came in for the Duck Lake Road project. We had talked to them about redoing the outlet for flood storage as part of the project overall. And at that time, that's when we recognized that, yes, they had changed that without a permit. 1979 and 1978, I believe it was, they came to the DNR and, no, it must have been after that. When did we come into existence? No, it was 1979, because it came into existence when I was born. They came to both the DNR and the Watershed District asking for a permit, which was denied by both entities at that time. Then at some point, they installed a non-permitted outlet. In 2021, we heard from numerous citizens that live on or around Duck Lake, and they were asking us if we could look at restoring it to the original 1969 elevation. We met with Eden Prairie and the DNR. The DNR said we could not change the runout elevation, but they did recommend that it might be possible, depending upon technical review, to change the outlet configuration such that it would mimic the hydrology that was being seen in the lake. So in 2024, the board authorized a task order for BAR to do an engineering report to look into the feasibility of modifying that outlet. And in October of 24, that feasibility report was presented to the Board of Managers. Since then, there's been further discussion, and at our 2 meetings ago, the managers asked for to go back and evaluate what the permitting implications would be, what the logistics of doing this would be. So again, the history of Duck Lake, what you'll see is a solid orange line at the top, a dotted blue line, and then a dotted orange line. And then the chart is the lake elevations, and they're all on top of each other because we take daily measurements on this lake since 2013. So the lines represent the 100-year flood, the control elevation from the 1969, as well as the control elevation from the 2014 configurations. The big spike that you see right around just before August of 2014, if you worked in water resources at the time, you will vividly remember that summer. We had a 12-inch rain event. Everything went I was going to use other words, went poorly. There was a lot of infrastructure that was shown to be not good. And I think that's probably what prompted the city of Eden Prairie to modify the outlet at that time, exceeded the 100-year. And then if you'll look at 21 through 23, really, those were drought years. All of those years, May through August, were below the mean, actually below the 30% for the year, for that monthly precipitation. The reason I put these in there is even with the modification of an outlet, it didn't even reach the 2014 control elevation. So a change in the outlet would not have changed that lake elevation. It wasn't even achieving that runout elevation. The next one we'll look at, this shows just a more higher resolution snapshot of 2023 and 2024 on the left and on the right, respectively. Again, I put in that control elevation of 913.45. There are different scales on these, so you can't just look straight across and see it. What you're seeing coming in from the top are the, Dylan, could you shut off that front row of lights, please? What you're seeing from the top coming down are the precipitation events. And then you are seeing the blue charted lake levels within it. And what you'll see is the same thing that's brought about in the report that was put together. You'll see a large event, you'll see a quick response, you'll see that bouncing, and then a relatively quick drawdown. New event, new response. So we aren't seeing a continuous growth from it. It's an event and a response. It's a flashy lake, in other words. 24, we had a rather wet spring, so we did have continuous growth, but we'd see the same trend. Rain event, spike, drop off. Rain event, spike, continuing. So just a little to go back to how we approach new projects with the plan. We did in the plan talk about adaptive management specifically, being able to identify issues as they come up and modify our plan to do that. But that did not preclude us from going through the procedures that we set forward in our plan. So before we can implement, this is from our plan, Appendix E, before we can implement a capital project and specifically commit levying funds to its design or construction, we must identify an effective design concept, develop confidence that the property agreements, permits, and approvals to build and maintain can be obtained, and establish a project cost estimate. As we'll discuss, the first two, Engineer Sobiek and myself, do not feel we can effectively get the design concept that we feel would work well and continuously, and then confidence that we can get the property agreements necessary to build and maintain it. After that, like we're doing tonight with the alum, we'll need to hold a public hearing. You would need to hold a public hearing, take input, and on the basis of all of that information, then make a decision whether to proceed or not with it. What's on the right is just a flow chart of the same thing, but showing the difference. If we had it already as part of our plan, we would just skip down to was a feasibility conducted. You have already asked for the feasibility, so we've got that, even though it was not part of our plan. So the first part of the memorandum we talk about is project prioritization scoring of this. All of you should have received a copy of a memorandum from the Duck Lake Association this morning. One of the things that they brought up in their memo is they weren't certain that the prioritization scoring truly reflects the benefits of that project. So we'll talk a little bit about that here. So this scored a 12 using our in-plan prioritization tool, what we use to decide whether or not a project should be done. Yes?
Make it bigger on the screen?
Well, I could make it bigger, but no.
Okay,
Uh,
sorry, it's
so
okay. Keep going.
the long and the short is, so there, we'll go through it. So the goal indices, so we have in our plan 7 different goals. And we've looked at those goals to say, how many of it does it fit? Fits 2 of those goals, so it's 2 points. The sustainability index, that is based off of an Envision, a tool that we adopted with the 2017 plan. And that Envision looks at everything from the human element, how is it going to affect the usability of that, to flood storage, to climate resiliency, the heat island effect, et cetera, et cetera. So on that basis, it scored a 1. We'll talk in a little bit about, in some ways, it actually makes the area less resilient because that live storage, which I'll talk about in more detail, actually disappears with this. So we have less resiliency built into it. Volume management indices, we aren't getting any volume management. There's no volume reduction that comes from it. Pollutant management, the same thing. Stabilization, the same thing. Habitat restoration, we scored it a 3 because there's already the winter kills that occur on the lake, and there would not be much of an improvement in fisheries based upon that, but there would be some. It's partnership. So this was one of them that the Duck Lake Association brought up, and that is that, well, they're willing to partner, so therefore there should be a partner. So that would, using that would go to a 3, and that would move the score to a 14. Education was another one that they asked that be evaluated, moved up. So even if we move that up to a 3, now we're at a 16 for this project. Education, though, as we define it in the plan, was, is it something that is accessible, easily accessible to the public that they can utilize to learn for an educational purpose? But even foregoing that, if we were to call it a 3 and get it to a 16, that still puts us well below what our projects had been to this point. And then watershed benefit, Duck Lake, because of its isolated nature, there isn't a tremendous amount of benefit downstream from it. So 12 to 16, the score. Within our capital project that made it into the 10-year plan, we had a list of hundreds of capital projects. And the cutoff ended up being 24 was the lowest scoring project that made it into the capital project. That project was not done and will not be done as part of this plan. We reevaluated the next plan if we're going to move forward. And that was a modification to an existing pond on Mitchell Lake, or in the Mitchell Lake subwatershed. The projects that have been completed thus far from the 10-year plan, completed or are in process at this time right now, range in score from 28 to 43, with an average score of 35.3. Before I move on, are there any questions about this? Because I think this is really the primary focus of, a lot of the other items that we'll talk about may or may not be able to be addressed, or problems that could probably be solved. But this one, I think, rises to the level of, I don't even know if it goes into public purposes at this point, but our plan would not warrant doing the project, which that's where I think wherein lies the difficulties. Yeah.
So on the scoring of the habitat restoration, it seems like it should get even a better score than 3, because right now you get, historically, except for the last 2 years where I've been paddling my kayak in January, we've had winter kill every year since they lowered the outlet level and put in the new outlet. The old outlet that was in obviously kept it over a foot taller for the top of the, before it started to run out. And then that was modified, but I think you've acknowledged, and our engineering has acknowledged, that the intermediate outlet, if you will, plugged very easily until the water got up to the top, and then it ran over the top and in.
Right.
So it functioned kind of like a hybrid, somewhere between the original outlet and the new outlet. The new outlet is very good. It doesn't ever plug. So, and because it is a shallow lake, the calculations done by residents around the lake is that roughly 30% of the volume is gone now. And if you have 30% less volume, it doesn't take a lot of science to figure out that you're going to have 30% less oxygen for the fish to survive. Okay, there's other factors, many, right?
Right.
So it's not so simple, but it is simple to say less water, less habitat. And I think that's true. So what's the maximum score for habitat restoration? Is that a
Maximum
5?
score would be 7.
7?
Yep.
So it seems like that one would be a questionable, if you look at it from the fact that now there's goldfish and essentially nothing else,
Right.
even with stocking, partly because of the drought and stuff, the water has never come back. So,
We did think about that, and what rose to our attention was that the 3 years prior to the last modification, it winter killed. So we had, even prior to that modification, we had 3 years of winter kill. But again, so even if we were to go with that, let's say we give that a 5, a habitat restoration of 5, we're now at 18, which I don't necessarily agree we should give a 5, but that said, we're at 18. Now, if one of the things they brought up was the fin program, but that isn't something that was factored into our metrics. So it isn't necessarily something we can calculate. If the fin is involved, then what does that mean for that? Now, that's something I think is at the board's discretion if they want to consider that it's now a fin lake and how that would fit into your evaluation of the project. But it's not something that we could factor in and
but
quantify.
it seems like being a fin lake that speaks directly to education and access.
Yep.
And then it also speaks to partnership with the DNR. I mean, they're going to stock it because they think
What is a fin lake?
winter kill.
It may be a partnership. They haven't reached out to us yet. It gets me to that though, that point of where
What
like
is a fin
through the
lake?
DNR,
Friends in the
Fishing in the
neighborhood.
Neighborhood. It's a program by the DNR to promote access to the lake for fishing for recreational purposes, whether it be take your kid fishing, et cetera. And they have been very involved with the Duck Lake Association on it. But yeah, I think it is something they consider. It was one of those though where I wish the DNR would talk to each other. Why don't the fin program go talk to the area hydrologist and say, we're making this a fin list. Can you work with us to do it? Because ultimately the DNR is the one that regulates the outlet elevation control. They're the ones that have the ability to say, yeah, let's modify this outlet or let's change the runout elevation.
So it is feasible.
I'm sorry.
It is feasible then if the DNR wanted to.
I can't speak for the DNR, but yeah, if the DNR decided that they wanted to return to the 1969 elevation, for instance, I think there's a very good argument to return to that, which we presented to the DNR. They just didn't agree with us, and I believe.
So one other approach would be to aerate it somehow, like we do with several lakes and the city does with some lakes, which
Yep.
would help with the fish population
Yep.
and help reduce chances of winter kill.
To be clear, if DNR liked the idea, that would, as Terry points out, that would be a big step in the direction of a modification. They would still have the statutory requirements. I mean, DNR, it's not a free pass if DNR is involved. They'd still need to satisfy the statutory requirements for an elevation change.
I guess. So when we started down this path, when they wanted to take the road out,
Mhm.
make that modification, at least my understanding was like, well, let's do this right. Let's do a bridge because why would it triggered the wetland rule, and it was just gonna be too complicated,
No,
and it was
it
just a mess, and so it wasn't gonna be a win-win like what we got. But I think the expectation was that they're gonna bring the lake back together, and it would be this holistic ecosystem that would actually function. And I think that's gotta be a disappointment if there are issues now.
So when we approved the permit, part of that permit was that the city of Eden Prairie was going to install an outlet that was consistent with the 1969 elevation. And that was approved by the board and agreed to by the city. And then when we went to the DNR said because it had been for more than 25 years, that they felt that that was the established condition and that is the condition that should be met. So that's where we first hit the wall, that we said, okay, well, what? And at that meeting is when they said, well, provided you can find technical basis for doing it, we would consider modifying that outlet configuration to mimic that, what Manager Ziegler was talking about, mimic that condition that of the less hydraulically competent outlet that was there. Or to put simply, the one that plugged all the time.
How was it when it was divided?
So that was the other thing that the Lake Association brought up, is the flooding that people are talking about was in the West Bay on the other side of the road. And there was like a 12-inch diameter pipe running under the road. And every time the other side flooded, then the water ran over the top of the road and dropped that, 1.5 feet down to the normal lake level. So the flooding only once in the last 30 years since I've lived near it has actually been the outlet in the lake plugged. The other plugs have all been in the one that went under the road, and the road isn't there anymore. So you can paddle a boat under the road. So that's not going to block regardless. And Engineer Sobiak said, hey, now they're always equal.
Yep.
So, the flooding risk is the whole lake or nothing. It's not going to flood left to the west side and not on the east side.
Correct, yeah, because the one side was always a little bit higher than the other. It never truly equilibrated because of the way that
Right,
configuration between the
The
two.
drainage from the school all came into the West Bay, and then in addition to that.
Yep.
So there was a lot of water coming in there. And I told the city more than once, the muskrats plugged that pipe with food for the
Yeah.
winter.
Yeah.
And then in the spring, guess what? The ice melts, the food is some's left. And if you're lucky, you've got about 2 or 3 inches on the top of the food where the muskrats crawl back and forth. And that's enough to keep it from flooding. But several years that I've lived there, I paddled around and you can see the water flowing over the road. The city has the road blocked off for obvious reasons. And there's no water coming out of the pipe. It's coming out of the gravel around the pipe a little bit,
Right.
but most of it's going over the top.
Yeah, and then it also, to Manager Ziegler's point, that the west side, at least 3 of those houses are where wetland historically existed. So, you've got groundwater influence going on with it as well. The wetland didn't go away. It's still there. It's just buried now. All right. So that's the scoring, project prioritization scoring.
So just one more question on this.
Yes.
So normally we don't say, so this project is no good, right? We say, okay, this is a lower priority project because it scores
Yeah.
low, right? So, if there's other things that can be developed, or I know in joint projects, a lot of time we took two low scoring projects and stuck them together or had a partner come in and the score changed. And then we decided to do it.
That is correct.
So I'm assuming this would be the same. We're not going to say this is a bad project, we're not doing it. We're going to say the score was too low and it's not a priority.
Where we're at right now, yeah, we would not recommend doing it with all of the conditions that exist as are. So if things were to significantly change or yes, other benefits were to be achieved or an alternate design or the railroad magically appeared and said, we need to fix this outlet for whatever reason, then all of a sudden we have the rights and access to get into it. But
That was the other huge impediment.
I'm sorry.
The railroad owning the
It's coming,
property and
yeah.
not granting it.
Yep.
I mean, that was a huge impediment.
Yes, so for instance, the 24 that's in there, that's part of what our thinking was. If something that were to come up to make that project more tenable, we would do it. We would push it forward. So yeah, to your point, yes, there's no reason to say, yeah, good, we never have to think about this ever again. The other things we talked about in it were was there a water quality benefit? One of the really good news about Duck Lake is it meets the PCA standard and everything, and it has for the better part of 11 years now. Now, it's worth noting that 96 through 2011, we did not sample the lake nearly as frequently as we do now. Nothing that has fewer than 3 sampling points is included in this. So if we only have a year with 1 sample, we don't use that because we have no way of knowing if it's an outlier or not. But water quality is good in Duck Lake. Again, clarity it's also been good. So the other thing to think about with water quality is, okay, maybe it isn't the water quality of Duck Lake. Maybe it's the water quality of the wetland that receives it or the water quality of Purgatory Creek afterwards. So there's a lot going on here, but I want to talk about 3 things because this has come up a few times in different meetings where we're talking about water quality volume versus flood storage. So this is the best approximation I could find that somebody else has already drawn up for me of a naturalized water body. We have what is showing on the bottom here. I always look at the screen and I should dismiss all of those. This line showing at the bottom is the permanent pool or the dead pool storage. That's where your water quality benefit comes from. So if you have a pond or anything else, this is where water remains detained long enough so that solids settle out and any particulate phosphorus or any phosphorus bound to those solids settle out. So downstream receives that improved water quality because it's been treated. And everything you see above that is the freeboard volume or the flood storage volume. What you're looking at on the right, that cylinder with the square in the middle of it, is their version of the old emergency or the outlet structure itself. If the and then up top here we have what we call an EOF or an emergency overflow. Duck Lake would not have an emergency overflow. It would be, I would have to go look at our model for what that route would be, what that lowest elevation would be, where it would run out. But I'm not as concerned about that because it is a large water body. But I am concerned about if it occludes or if we get back to back to back rain events, we actually lose the resiliency of having that freeboard volume in the lake. So that's another reason why the resilience score did not go higher than the 1. So we don't have that freeboard volume, and we don't have the downstream water quality benefit because the permanent volume hasn't changed. The permanent pool volume has not changed. It stays the same. If we were to excavate the lake and leave the outlet the same, that would be a different story. Then the last, really the I kind of threw them all together, constructability and long-term maintenance of it. So TC&W is Twin Cities and Western Railroad. They own the land that it sits on, that the outlet structure itself sits on. Eden Prairie had approached them about it on our behalf when we first started this discussion. They indicated they were less than thrilled to participate and had some requests of Eden Prairie that Eden Prairie wasn't keen on granting or acquiescing to. Even if we took Eden Prairie out of it and we negotiated, we would still have the same negotiation projects with Twin Cities and Western in order to be able to do it. I have gone through the process before. Scott has gone through it a few times. Mr. Welch, have you ever gone through negotiations with a railroad?
I would say I have tried. I think it's amazing that the city even got them to answer their phone call.
Right.
The railroads tend to just only do things if they're 100% squarely in their own interests.
Yep. So does have a tendency to be laborious, we'll say. And then the fill below the 100-year elevation would require compensatory storage. As we found out with the Duck Lake Road project, there aren't a whole lot of places to get that. The best place would be on the railroad land. So again, we'd have to approach the railroad. That's not to say we couldn't find some. That's why when I was talking earlier, a lot of these problems are solvable. They're just really hard to solve. Yeah.
So I thought a little bit about the compensatory storage, and right across from the outlet, there's an outlot that's owned by the neighborhood association. So it's not like you'd be taking property from, a homeowner. The neighborhood association could simply vote and say, hey, it doesn't take that much compensatory storage if there's, say a weir that's, 1 foot tall by 1 foot wide by 12 foot
It
long.
would probably be 10 or 15 cubic feet would be what we would need. It isn't a tremendous amount.
Yeah, right. And, frankly, most of the neighbors wouldn't notice the difference. So, yeah, there is a possibility of something like that. So just keep that in the back of your mind.
Yep.
Obviously, it doesn't really change the score. It's just another partner possibly, but
It
know,
definitely
just-
changes the ease or
Yeah.
eliminates a logistical issue with it. So that was a big one. And then it eliminates the next one too. Any alternate configuration would also require floodplain fill. The city now will go to the long-term maintenance of it. So assuming we got on there and we were able to construct it, the city of Eden Prairie has indicated that they do not want to maintain a 1-inch V-notch or triangle shaped weir. I'm showing what a V-notch weir would look like and that distance across the top where the delta sits above the theta there is the 1-inch. That would be the part that would be 1-inch. So basically the width of 2 of your fingers together. And so that's what they do not want to maintain that. Now, we could maintain it, but there's a number of things that really makes it difficult for us. The biggest ones, we don't have any rights at all to go in there to maintain it. So we would have to have some type of an easement or agreement with the railroad in order to get in there. I don't really want to go down a third party type agreement where Eden Prairie does it, but we take the blame if they don't. So property rights. We don't have the staffing or the resources to start maintaining public outfalls. Again, a solvable problem, but that would require more capital, more staffing and equipment. And then the one I didn't put in here and I should have, it was in the memorandum, is Mr. Welch and I just spent some time with the PCA. They had concluded that we fit the criteria to be a municipal separate storm sewer system. permittee and asked us to provide evidence that we were not. And so we provided that evidence in the form of we don't own any outfalls into MS4 regulated waters. Neither of us, or at least I'm not certain that this would make us an MS4 permittee, but I think it's highly probable that they would take another bite at the apple for us to be one. Why does that matter? A lot more reporting, a lot more regulation, another agency over our shoulders, just more obligations for our limited capital to have to address. It's not the end of the world. Capital Region is an MS4. Minnehaha Creek Watershed District is an MS4. There are watershed districts that are MS4 permittees out there. It's not unheard of. And then the last one, again, Manager Ziegler talked about it. Even if the flooding doesn't occur, I think we all know as soon as one person experiences some localized flooding after we put this in, they're going to look at us and say, well, you did that, then this happened. Whether or not there is a causation, there will be a correlation, and we will have to address that in some manner, shape, or form. So for all of these reasons, Engineer Sobiek and I do not feel that this should be pursued at this time. As Manager Ziegler said, we can try and work through some of the things, but that's our recommendation. So I'm happy to answer questions to the best of my ability. Ones that are more technical, I may need to defer until Engineer Sobiek returns and have him address them, but I can pretend to be an engineer for a moment.
So I have a question. How many other lake associations would want us to come in and change their outfall because they're having or experiencing similar issues?
I know of 2 lakes that have approached us about modifying their outlet, either to reduce or to stabilize their elevation. So Silver Lake and Lotus Lake have both approached us at different times, asking us to look into the outlet configuration.
So I think we need to take into account if we say, oh, we want to try to be able to help this lake get a higher elevation in, we've got to be able to say that to the other 2 lakes. Am I right?
I would think, yes, that we would be setting a precedent that other lake associations would definitely want to capitalize on.
Well, as a person who lives on Silver Lake, I can tell you that we have 2 pieces of property that will flood if we get 10 inches of rainfall. And the one thing that scares me is that those people, if we change the height of that weir, will be coming to the district and looking for compensatory money because their houses are sitting in water, their basements are sitting in water. And there has been a huge amount of dialogue between people on the lake because they put really cool docks in, and then their docks are now suddenly not sitting in water anymore because we had some dry spell and it's a shallow lake. And so neighbors are not speaking to one another on Silver Lake at this point. There are factions that have gotten going. And I know if we were to say to them, gee, we could raise the height of this weir up enough to allow people to have water under their docks, there'd be a lot of people who would be really happy, but I will tell you, there will be some people who will definitely be looking to the watershed district. And this really scares me. We don't know what's going to happen with climate change. And I fear for the 10 inches of rainfall that could potentially come in 4 or 5 hours. And you're thinking there's enough compensatory storage in your little area when some of it was actually a wetland before. That really scares me. I don't want to put the watershed district at risk.
So just a clarification, we're not raising the level of the outlet. The only thing we're doing is making it with a low outlet, same as it is right now, and then a higher level for flood. And the higher level for flood would be the same level as the original outlet. But the outlet that drains every day would be at the same level, the or 913.5 that it is today. So we're not saying raise the lake level. We're saying increase the water storage. When we have a heavy rain, it drains out slower rather than all or nothing. Right now, with a lot of weirs, that's kind of what it is. With Terry's diagram, that would mean there was nothing below the overflow. Right? So this would be, we're saying 1 inch because that's what engineer Sobiak said would match the old grade configuration. But that even the interim one had the lowest level was at the 913.2 or 4, whatever it was. But you know, when we got a 6, 7, 8 inch rain, you know, it filled up, but then it drained out slower. So as Terry pointed out, it soaks in anyway. But now with all or nothing, it's a matter of days. It's back to the lower level. And then you have 3 months of drought and it only goes down from there. So it's not the same as,
But you are requiring or thinking that you're going to need to have some maintenance to keep all of that open, correct?
no. The city is saying that because they didn't maintain worth a shit on the road where the pipe plugged. They
So-
just let it go until it flooded.
Who's
and
going to
then
be
they
doing
cleaned
that
it.
then?
We have several people who live on the lake who are doing the old one, keeping it clean. And no one asked them to. No one told them that was their job. But, you know, paddling around the lake, it's not really a big problem to pull a few things away from the outlet if you see it's plugged.
Is that
We're
a-
still gonna be the responsible entity for
Right.
it. Somebody has to be the responsible entity.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but we've got lots of stuff where we have storm drains, where we have adopt a drain program, and people other than us maintain it, and we don't take MS4 responsibility for it. It's still the city, but we still sponsor them to, sponsor is probably the wrong word. But anyway, we still have this adopt a drain program that's very popular where people clean the drains to keep the leaves and other stuff out of the lake. And, you know, several people paddle around and if they see a problem, they fix it. So it's not something that wouldn't happen. It would happen.
But you're
would it be-
relying on volunteers to do that. And that's supposed to be what we're supposed to rely on.
The bottom line is still the overflow is the same as it is the 914. Then it's everything goes. And the only flooding we've had is above that. So, or on the other side of the road where it was a whole like 1.5 feet, 2 feet higher to get over the top of the road.
So I just think when you're looking at the fact that score is low and nothing else has been put through that's remotely close to the score. Other lakes would want the same thing. The maintenance issues, we can't get on there because the railroad won't let us. There's at this point no compensatory storage that we actually have formal. There's a lot of reasons that I can understand why they're saying no.
So this gives us 42 acre feet of storage that we don't have today because they lowered the outlet level. So that's exactly where the storage comes in, right? It's draining down to the bottom. It might take a month, but it's draining down and then floods in the spring thaw or whatever. But it doesn't ever get above the top of the weir, but it gets into the V. And I think 1 inch is a ridiculous number, but you know, that's what the engineer said you would need. The old grate had 12 1-inch slots. So, and that gave us the old level variation.
So why hasn't the Lake Association gone to the DNR and get them to agree to modify it?
Good question.
Because Silver Lake, that's the first thing everybody did, was they went right to DNR and said, please, please, please. Why haven't they done that? Why are they looking for us to resolve the issue for them?
So that's a great question. We shouldn't have to have the argument here.
Right,
It should be directly with the DNR.
right.
Manager Bell, I believe, has a.
So I wonder if you could back up and just in a couple sentences, state what the issues are, what is being asked of us, watershed, to do. Is there something you can just state really simply? I mean, rather than the 8 pages of, it sounds like a legal argument almost in terms of what we're laying out on both sides. Is that really what it's about?
So,
That first paragraph, right?
pardon?
The scoring.
That first paragraph.
The bottom line is, they are experiencing winter kill. They would like to have increased depth within the lake as much as possible. And we were asked to evaluate if we could modify, well, first, if we could raise that elevation, then if we could modify the outlet to mimic pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
But, so as we look through it, the feasibility report that is done thus far, we've concluded that we should not proceed with it. I think really the question before the managers right now is, would you like to add to the agenda to have BAR come forward with a task order to actually start designing an outlet and going through the permitting process and going through the negotiations? Or have you been provided enough information that at this point you'd just like to wait and see if other ancillary benefits or logistics are removed?
The other thing that is part of the main argument is there was a permit violation. They applied for a permit and it was denied twice. The city applied for a permit and it was denied twice by the watershed and by the DNR. So the permit violation is the start of this problem. It isn't, just some random weather change.
So it sort of feels like we're trying to find the lowest person on the chain that will take up the cause. Who has the least resistance to taking this over?
No, I think it's a valid point. It's the DNR.
So the DNR is the authority that is responsible for setting the OHW for lakes and for determining what that run out elevation is going to be. The DNR is a large organization and can often be hard to move in a certain direction. We have relationships with people within the DNR, which gives us a little better position to discuss things with. And I think that's why the watershed district was involved at this point.
So,
If I may,
go ahead.
Chair. My piece to add to Terry's recap here and to answer Senator Duval's question would be, the issue as Mr. Jeffrey has described in some amount of detail, go back and forth, and we've looked at this and gone back and taken a few runs at it. This is a summation of what the engineer's review is. It is their technical analysis of the question. The question before the Board of Managers now is, based on the findings, you can do several things. One would be nothing and say, we don't see a strong basis for the district to move forward with a next step. Let's wait and see how things develop. Two, you could say, we get it, we understand. But we want to look at, the Lake Association brought up a few points in its communication that was received earlier this week. We want you to look at those. You could direct staff to go do additional analysis. Or you could say, let's do the project anyway for this reason, this reason, this reason, and move forward with the statutory process for developing and ordering a project and the design and all those kind of things. When a capital project comes before you, you get your resolution that has these recitals at the beginning that say, because this, because this, because this. And if I know that can feel kind of boilerplate, but it really is based on a technical body of work that usually, mostly the engineer, also staff, have put together to say, you have strong hydrological, water resource management, flood risk concern basis for spending this public money. And I don't mean to over dramatic. You have to have that. You have to have that to meet the public purposes doctrine. And this preliminary analysis that Mr. Jeffrey and Mr. Sobiak have put before would have to be supplemented with additional analysis that boosted some work, the outlet modification, or something else if it were involving some different flood compensatory storage, to say, okay, now we've got a body of technical findings that we can order a project on. You're not there right now.
So is there a time sensitivity to this decision other than just wanting it?
So
Is there a time sensitivity to us dealing with this right now?
Other than how much more staff time you want to devote to this at this time?
So just one point there, we didn't do it fast enough. So we lost our opportunity to, when it first happened, if the watershed had jumped on, hey, you violated our permit. But the DNR is saying it's been like this for, I don't know how many years it was, but X number of years. Now our rules say that you have to go through the whole approval process. So there was a time sensitivity to us, but you're right. I mean, that's past and gone. So,
Of us weren't here.
so it's not time sensitive anymore. So,
other than the interest in it among.
sure.
The managers themselves.
So
yes.
if it's not time sensitive anymore, what would be harmed with letting the response to what we've done here be carried out a little bit further to add in part of our discussion, and well as maybe seek the Lake Association for their proceeding up the chain to DNR that we were just mentioned. I think the question was raised a couple minutes ago, and bring it up and continue it until we see it's just bright line, yes or no. If a large group of people in our watershed, if they're obviously behind this, and if it's not time sensitive, why not let them carry forward a little bit further what they've suggested outside of the scoring per se, and bring it up at a next meeting or 2 months from now.
So I don't want to too fine a point on this. Right now, the evidence that I have before me is no, it is a bright line.
Okay.
So unless the managers have something that would countermand the technical basis, I don't, you put it another way. If what we were discussing was, hey, the DNR has said you can go ahead and you can return to that previous elevation, this scoring would be entirely different. Because now we are getting great habitat benefit. We are getting more resilience out of it. We are getting a number of benefits that we wouldn't otherwise be getting. But that's not the case. So it really becomes, because there never is a point where you can say, this is just an absolute no, to Manager Ziegler's point. Parameters can change unless it's illegal. That would be about the only time I think you would go, yeah, that's no, we're not doing that. But based on everything we have done this far with the analysis, the modeling and everything else, I would not recommend it. I would say it's about as bright a line as we're gonna get right now.
Yes, Manager Crockett.
And the other thing is, there are so many logistics here where there are impediments. So I think the Lake Association going to the DNR is the best path forward, because, I mean, you look at what's happening down in Albert Lea, Shell Rock. I mean, they're into a project
Yeah.
and they are $800,000 into commitments into it. But the DNR won't do the permit. And so I mean, it's been stalled for 9 months, I think.
Yes.
If we don't have logistics, I mean, some of the things we're trying to do depend on getting landowner permission. So I see enough impediments in here that even if we tried to, and it'd be
Yeah,
better.
why
for the
would
Lake
we
Asso-
proceed if we know that the big issue isn't something we can deal with?
Right, and the railroads,
Uh,
yeah.
No matter what it is, with Fountain Lake, for example, if the DNR doesn't agree, their project can't go anywhere. There's another one in northern Minnesota where they have a
The race of the
firm
fence,
or whatever.
the bends,
Fen.
the calculator.
So it's, they believe that there's a fen, which is kind of like an underground wetland. I've never heard of it before, but anyway, the DNR won't do it because they believe there's a fen. And they spent almost $1 million on the project just to have the DNR say, we don't know. We can't give you a permit. We don't know.
We don't know. Yeah.
They won't define what a calcareous bend is.
Ms.
Okay.
Welch, I don't.
Anyway, it's,
So
but there are these impediments.
you're saying, your feeling is it's a no to agree with what the staff says, that it's the Lake Association's job to go to the DNR and see what they can do, right? I think
That's my
you-
sense.
My sense is you would like to go forward.
No, I'm saying we don't want to waste our money,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
We want to have a path that seems reasonable. I mean, we start other projects without 100% certainty that we're going to get everybody to buy in, and we spend a lot of money. And other watershed districts or water management organizations have the same problem. If they get too hung up on this is a great project, they can spend a lot of money and end up not going anywhere. And we don't want to do that. We want to have a clear path.
I mean, and to manage the point, you never know 100% certainty that's going to work. So there's going to be some risk that you're going to have to accept. But what is that level of risk?
Okay, Tom, what's your feeling on this?
It doesn't seem like we should be doing anything with this.
State attorneys general.
There's just way, way too many things
That's who made the decision.
to probably expound on what Administrator Jeffrey said. There's too many bright lines out there that we don't have any influence over, and we can spend a lot of money getting half the distance to that next bright line. This doesn't seem like it's something we should proceed on.
Yeah, and I'm,
President
Yes.
Pedersen, Ms. Karsten had a comment.
yes.
So it's actually written up there. Please comment on the.
Reason Lake Little by
approach.
modifying their weir would be to lower the lake bottom through
Oh.
dredging.
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Okay.
I don't know if it'd be an easier permitting process or not, but what Manager Ziegler was saying earlier, if you could get ancillary benefits, so let's take the goldfish as an example. The best way to get rid of them would be a full drawdown and a rotenone treatment. And once you're drawing down, if you could demonstrate that there's sediment deposition that should not be there, that was not the original substrate, you sometimes get a permit for doing that. The city of Jordan was able to do it. There are a number of examples where people have actually done just that. That is an alternate path forward.
Would we have to do core samples, or could we do core samples before the drawdown to see
Exactly.
what the benefit could be?
That's exactly what it'd
That'd
be.
make an easier sale for everyone involved, I'm sure.
Buy-in, because that's what happened at 9 Mile when they tried to draw down.
So the 9 Mile, they got part of it done and they didn't get to do all
Yeah,
of it.
yeah, it's a hard sell for somebody who's bought lake property and want to drain the lake just to make it better. And you know it's going to take a year to fill it
There's
up
gonna be
again.
2 years where you're really not gonna enjoy your lake at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Yeah,
DNR is only gonna accumulated sediment down to the original contours of the lake. If you can core to establish that. And
That was.
if I can
created,
address,
yeah.
yeah, the problem that 9 Mile had at Anderson was just they reached the technical feasibility limit of the equipment they had to remove any more than they did. It just was too far out there on too squishy ground.
Yeah,
They couldn't get their gear out there any further.
they had a
Among
real,
other
yeah, they had a real
challenges we had on that
problem with
one.
drawdown of that lake. They could never get it to a firm up. I can't say for certain, but this is not, I mean, that was basically wetland that they were working in. And no matter how much they took the surface water out, there was always the groundwater intrusion they were always going to be dealing with on that.
Taking a wetland.
This may not be the same, but that would be something we would do a technical analysis on and see what,
Well, there'd be something simple with the core.
relatively simple. I mean, it's not,
I'm hearing the three of us are saying at this point, we can't move forward. I also concur with that. I look at the immense number of projects this watershed district has, where funding and staff time absolutely need to go to those things. And I would love to be able to help people at Duck Lake, like I'd love to be able to help the people on Silver Lake, the other lakes that want to have the same problem. But I have to be a person who does the right thing with the funding that we get from the public, and where is the need the greatest? And I don't see this as the greatest need. I think we have so many other projects that we need to spend money on and staff time on. So I'm a no on this. The Lake Association, if you can come back to us and say, these are the things that have changed that will help the scoring go up higher, I'm very happy to listen. I'm not saying I'm dead set against all this. It's just the way it sits now. No.
Does Bonnie want to weigh in? Do we need?
Can she just,
Yep.
yeah, she can. Bonnie, do you want to weigh in on this?
There's note, I'm sure, why she's not here.
We can't hear you. Wait, we can't hear you.
I'm looking for the switch.
No.
My comment is, I believe there's too many impediments. I'm not seeing the water quality. They're the lake that meets the standards right now. So even moving it forward, if the alternate solution risks upsetting that, I don't know. So I don't see any reason to move forward with this at the time. So the railroad, I've worked with railroads before. I don't think we'd ever get an agreement with them to change anything. Just
Thank
my
you.
experience, but.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think we've kind of covered the topic and we have some consensus here.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I would like to, well, I can bring it back to another meeting. But would the managers have any interest in going out and doing some coring on Duck Lake? Just to even see if there's volume available for.
How much is
dredging.
it going to cost, Terry? Staff time and dollar time?
Mr. Maxwell. This is going to be a little bit beyond, well, it probably won't be much deeper than your typical sediment coring, to be honest. How deep do you go with your current coring?
Our current coring is about 2.5 feet, I would say.
So we
The
could,
the caveat with this is it's a different type of analysis, right? We're not doing the same analysis as with like a alum treatment, which is what we're doing a lot of our coring for. So
we could, the short answer is staff could do the coring. The analysis is really just a gradation of soils, which is actually going to be a cheaper lab test than what we get for the alum. So
you could-
we'll put the cart before the horse. Well, how much are you getting for the lab, test quotes now? About 30,000, was it?
So for Lake Riley coring, currently I have estimation at $15,000. So,
So
but
prob-
again, this is sediment,
Yes.
you know, slicing each sediment layer, testing release rates of each sediment layer, which is a very different analysis than what we're talking about here.
We could probably do it for less than 5.
Go get some quotes from the lab for
Yeah.
what would be and bring it back. if we
Yeah.
wanna-
All right, so how about if we give them a cap?
I'll
We
go
say
get, well,
less
why don't I
than,
just go get
Well,
quotes?
Get
we're
some
only in a
quotes.
workshop,
Yep,
so
yep.
what we would probably want to do is get an estimate.
We'll just get some
Let's
quotes,
see.
bring them back and
Okay.
we can decide if you want to
Okay.
move
Yeah.
forward with that.
okay, sounds good. All righty. So our next item on the workshop is the annual report.
That's me again. This is, we're gonna be really short and sweet, actually. So we are starting our, annual report, 2024 annual report. We have 180 days into the year to have, right, 180 days, I want to say. Or is it
120.
120? No, it's 180, thanks. Oh. At any rate, so it'll be due at the end of May, is I think what it works out to be, doesn't it?
Well, 180 would be end of June.
Yeah, so on to May, so 100, no. There, it's coming due.
Double check.
Yeah.
So is it the same report the CAC saw?
So no, this will be, oh, did she go through, I don't know, maybe Jill did, or maybe she already went
That's
through.
Bonnie, but Liz forwarded this to me, so because it was presented at the CAC meeting.
Yeah, so it's the same report that we put out every year. I just want to go through, because I don't think we've ever really talked to you about what the requirements of rule are for what we include in it. I want to talk about the outline that we used for the report, and then I just want the managers to say, yep, I think that's what we want included, or I would like to see this in there or that in there. So really, that's all this is, real just informal, talk about where we're at with it, what we're doing new this year, et cetera. So again, all right, 120 days. It's decided. So Minnesota Rule 8410. Right, it is 8410. Yeah. These are the requirements. There's 2 pages. So list of organizations, board members, designated officers, and government organizations that board members represent. For us, we're not a JPA, so that doesn't pertain to us. And the counties that you're in. So, and then in the right column in the 2023 annual report, these were the pages they were located on. They're going to be roughly the same place in this report. Contact person capable of answering questions. Just, we need to have our phone lists in there. Our numbers, who to call for data collection, who to call for, et cetera. So previous annual work plan, and then the statement of what was completed. And what we really do is we utilize our budget page to show this and show what we work on, what our progress is between that and the engineer's report that you see every month with a little Gantt chart in it and where we're at. Again, the same thing with the 24. So we need to show the preceding years. Budgets will need to show, actually, Michael, clarification. And this, we go through this every year. So if we're doing the 2024 plan, do we need to show the 2023 budget, what we completed, and then, or is it the 2024 and then the 2025 plan?
2024 budget and work plan, what you did, and then what the work plan is for 2025.
Okay, good.
Yep.
All right. Every 2 years, what we do it every time we put out our annual report, go through the capital program and where we're at with it. And this is located in several different places throughout the project, including the appendices that's solely devoted to capital projects. Significant trends in monitoring data. This is something we are going to do different this year. Before we put the entire water resources report into our annual report, the whole water resources report is a behemoth. Really what we need is a summary of trends. What are the trends that we are seeing? So Mr. Maxwell is putting together a summary of his report which is a little more digestible. The water resources report will still be available. It'll be its own standalone document. So instead of having a 700-page document, of which 690 of them are the water resources report.
Can those fact sheets be used for something like that?
The fact sheets will be used within the report, yes.
They're nice summaries.
Yep. We also need a copy of any annual communications. We do that with the calendar. Calendar is our annual communication, much less prescriptive of what needs to be in there. It's just explain our program and who the officers and phone numbers are. Biennial solicitation. So this is our professional services, which we will be going out for this year for auditing, accounting, legal services, engineering services. That has to be in there. Status of local water plan adoption and local implementation of activities. So this is actually, and I'm going to look to Mr. Welch on this, as well as actually the next three items. These are what the cities that need to follow our plan have. So what are they doing to implement our rules, if any are? What variances they granted from our rules that we know of, and we went as well, because they're required to tell us when they do their variances. So that all is in typically in the regulatory program appendices. I think you have all read through our prior plans, and I like them. I have a little bias, but I think they're good. But here is our table of contents of information that we include in the plan. So the first part is just 3 pages of really just that bulk that we're talking about. Who are our consultants? Who are our staff? Who are our managers? What are our governance?
We have to describe the watershed physical.
So we don't in this. We have to describe trends or changes that we have seen from year to year, but it isn't like the first 2 chapters of our plan where it's in there. And then the rest of it, the meat of what we do is included in the administration and planning, as well as the budgets. We do put a lot of our information within appendices rather than embedding it in the report, just because there is so much information and it makes more sense to us to do that. A lot of watershed districts, I think as many different watershed districts as there are, there's as many different formats for their annual report. But that information that was on those proceeding has to be in all of them, regardless of what format you use. Manager DeVal.
And this is due at the end of May? Or very
End of April.
end of April?
Yeah.
So do we include our 2024 audit in here?
Yes, it has
Yes.
to be in there.
So the audit will have to be in there.
So
So the audit is a different time frame. So we send that separately and we'll hold a placeholder in the annual report to incorporate it into it at a later date when it's done.
because we're not scheduled to have work starting until the end of this month.
That's the 180 days. That's where it came from. So, yeah, the audit is 180 days from the first of the year.
The Bowser has to do a report to the legislature. And they have to check every watershed district and I guess WMOs, I don't know. And SWCDs, but so everybody's has to be checked off that they turned this kind of information in, that they had an annual report. But the audit's got to be part of it, yeah.
So in past years, managers have had input, things they wanted to see a little different or I think for the purposes of thinking about this, it will look like the 2023 annual report. And if you want to go back onto our website and look through it, and if you have things that you feel are either confusing or don't provide enough information, or you think should be included somewhere else in the report, please let me know. And we will make those changes to that annual report as that. But Bowser likes the format we use. They've accepted it every year. I like it. I think it's easy to get through and find the information you're looking for. But I want the managers to like it as well.
So, in the past, I've been very excited when there's been more pictures added, because if I'm a regular
Like your
person
pictures.
in the, yes, in the public, and I'm trying to figure it out, if you give me this many pages and not enough to look at, I'm a little on the sleepy side getting towards the end. So whatever you can, I mean, we've got so many wonderful things that we could use. I know Liz has got tons of stuff she could put in there. Charts and pictures are good.
Let's just pull up the annual report,
Yeah.
2023. Take a look at it.
Yeah, see, look how lovely. There's a picture right away at the beginning.
With appendices. It's big.
Uh-huh,
That's because this one has the water resource report.
uh-huh.
Here's a picture.
One duck. Little baby ducks, that's it. Charts, pictures are good.
So yeah, she lays it out a lot like a pamphlet, really.
Yep.
And so, and then the table of contents in two different places where you can go through it.
Hmm.
This takes us to the 10-year plan, so we've just hyperlinked the 10-year plan right within the document. So 2023 audit, so manage develop, this is how we incorporate it in the initial report before it even goes. We just create a link to it, go to it.
Is that a lotus flower?
Yep,
Nice.
yeah, probably not around on that lake anymore. I'll big in this.
Does such a nice job of it.
Yeah, so this is our capital status, the capital where we're at the end of 22 for the 20, this was the 23 plan we're looking at, a 23 report. We'll update this to go through all of that.
It's nice and succinct.
Same thing. Not many pictures, it's a big table, big table. We could probably put pictures of all our consultants in there, put a picture of Scott and Michael in there.
Color.
Well, at least there's, I mean, there's charts that are easy to read, but hey.
All right, and then Miss Forbes, more pictures.
It just makes it a little more,
Well, it's gotta fit the format that's
Yeah,
required
yeah.
though.
So the bulk of it really is.
oh,
what
she
are-
says yes.
What are our projects and programs and what have we spent on to date? What is our progress on them? So here we get into our appendices. Here's some pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Oh, there's a great picture. Look at that picture. So, and this is also where the fact sheets get incorporated in, letters from the district. Maps are good as pictures,
are good.
right? I like maps.
That counts.
So, but yeah, please look through it. You got the picture comment, and then we get that. And if there are things that you're just, where's this information? I know we worked on that. Can we put that in there? Things like that. So look for input on that. Any questions about the annual report, about our obligations, about what needs to be in by rule? What we've done in the past, how we disseminate it, who are the audience for it? And that
Does
seems
it basically go to Bowser or does it go to whatever?
goes to Bowser, all of our member cities. It goes to Met Council. It goes to the Commissioner of the DNR. It goes to PCA. It goes to Department of Health. Pretty much the same people we do a plan distribution to.
So another finance question then, when the audit is done later on, do we send that out separately?
Yes. Yep, that has to go to
But to all the people you just mentioned?
it does not need to go to all the people we just mentioned. I tend to send it to all the people we just mentioned just because I've got the distribution list made, but Bowser, the DNR are the two that really,
No, state auditor.
state auditor.
For the audit
Yeah.
and for
So
the
they
annual
get,
report, it goes to the Bowser board.
is this the way all the watersheds do?
requirement.
All the watersheds do it this way? They're detached from,
I can't speak for all the watersheds. The administrators I've talked to, yes, their annual report is just simply because of the timing, because the audit tends to come you really can't start the audit until March. By March, you really need to be well into your annual report, so they too don't tend to align very well.
So just to follow up on that, I don't think I've ever gotten a question as to why that starting date and the completion of the audit is so late. Is that just to accommodate the CPA firms?
Part of it is it really can't start until March because we don't have all of the final records from the preceding year to do it. And the other part, I think, is just scheduling for the people who do it. There's only a few firms that do the audits for watershed districts.
Okay.
Getting them in. So Mr. Monahan and I have been working on the audit with them for the better part of 2 months now already. So it's not that nothing is going on. They just they have their, what they call field days. They used to be field days. They used to come in and actually dig through our boxes and files. But now, since everything's electronic, they usually just have us send it all to them. And we have a SharePoint with them, a secure folder that we upload information. When it's uploaded to that site, it will let us know that that task is complete. They'll review it. If they have questions or need additional information, they'll come back to us. Our accountant, Redpath, has hired another Bonnie. So now I have 3 Bonnies to keep straight. She was an auditor for a city before she came to this. So she is working with the other Bonnie right now. Remember last year they had to get someone out of their Atlanta office to help out. So she's had on me to get stuff. So I think we're in good shape.
Nancy used to have to go through some of the transactions and definitely separate out what was actually in the year.
Yeah.
And from anything in the next year. So there was
Got
some time, labor intensive
Yes,
stuff.
yeah, it really was a few days of just nonstop going through
Right.
boxes and files and folders, but a lot easier now.
Any other comments or questions on the annual report?
I do have another item that is discussion that we could probably get. I see we have a little time left, but I don't have anything on the annual report. It looks good. Looks great every year to me.
Can we put it under the manager report in the meeting or?
We could. Do we need, I mean, it looks like we have almost a half an hour
Yeah.
or a little over a half an hour.
Mr. Welch
Not
has,
supposed to, right?
Given the timing, I would recommend that the managers authorize the administrator to complete and file the annual report with the Board of Water and Soil Resources and such other entities as.
Can we do that during a workshop or do we need
No,
to
we
do
could-
that during our
that's fine.
meeting? Okay. So I move that we authorize the district administrator to complete and file the annual report.
I second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed?
Oh, do we need roll call because?
we need
Bonnie's-
roll.
Oh, yeah,
we
Bonnie.
have a manager.
Bonnie says, wait, we need to hear you. We can't hear you.
Did she just say aye or do we need to go roll call?
I think I should abstain because I'm remote.
No,
Well, we have our lawyer here to tell us.
There's no need, so just to keep it clean.
Okay,
okay.
thank you,
I
Bonnie.
don't know that it
4-0.
makes a difference, but Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
Manager Ziegler,
Yes.
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
and Manager Nelson abstains.
Abstain.
401.
Okay, anything else?
I have nothing else for the managers.
So just from a Minnesota watershed standpoint, we've got this summer tour coming up, and there's been a lot of debate about it's up in Roseau. One of the board members, actually the president, has said he wants to rent a car because it's actually cheaper to rent a car and drive it up and just charge the cost than it would be to pay for mileage. So all I wanted to say is, you know, if we think we want a carpool, then we should let them know so they don't get a bus that's too big. If they, you know, the bus seems like, you know, renting a car is actually more economical because you don't have to pay for the driver,
Right.
right? So, if we can let them know, hey, we're all coming from the same area and going to the same area at the same time, we'd like to carpool. I guess I'd like to carpool anyway.
Okay, so you're a carpooler. Are you
Yeah,
a carpool?
Carpool.
You're a carpool?
Jan said they were gonna try and get a van.
They sent out an email about signing up for the bus, but he just said it's cheaper to
Okay.
carpool than it is to do a van. Or
So you're talking rent a car and we
So
all go
for-
together?
Bus for the Twin Cities area, we're gonna have to have some place for everybody to go to.
Okay.
Probably
They could-
Central
They
or
could come here and
Northern
pick us up. but-
Metro, all at the same time, and then get on the bus and ride up and then drive back from there.
So you're thinking that we would,
I'm thinking as a watershed district and maybe even including like 9 Mile or Minnehaha Creek, we could say, okay, we'd like to do this carpool with either a rented vehicle or,
that would accommodate all of us.
right.
Okay, oh, okay.
Bonnie, are you in on the carpool or?
The one twist is it's likely I might not come home with you.
Okay.
I would like to go up.
So you wouldn't be riding the bus both ways, so you'd
Just
have
one-
to,
Yeah,
Just,
just one way, she says.
I
how
like the
does
idea
that-
of carpooling. I think that gives a lot more flexibility, but that's. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm open.
Okay, and I'm in the middle of landscaping season and I can't take time off in the middle of,
Okay.
that's terrible. for me.
Yeah. I mean,
You're in the loop.
So, well, it sounds like you got 4. How's that?
or that could carpool
Yes.
or potentially ride the bus.
Right.
Would the managers like me to reach out to 9 Mile Minnehaha Creek? I did talk to 9 Mile. Administrator Snagowski wasn't sure any of her managers were going to be going up because it's in Roseau, but perhaps if there was another option such as carpool or bus, they might think differently about it.
And the way they're trying to lay it out, people on the board for the Minnesota watersheds are not staying that extra half day, which tends to make it difficult for things like a bus.
Yeah.
Or, you don't want to have everybody stay an extra day in the hotel just
Costs
for a
much
few
more fee,
managers.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll be staying.
Well, it's going to be the 3 days. So you drive up the first day and you drive back the last
everybody's on
day.
the same.
Everybody's on the same.
Okay, so they're holding the business meeting.
The
sometime.
business meeting is one of the evenings.
Okay, good, good. Okay.
Okay,
I
anything
wasn't
else
sure when it was.
for the workshop? Okay, hearing nothing, we'll say our workshop comes to an end at 6:30 and we have a little half-hour break before we start in on our meeting at 7. Thank you.